When kids just won't listen, parents often feel stuck with two choices: to give in or get angry. It's exhausting. We give you the top techniques directly from the experts, helping you on your path to a more peaceful, respectful, and joyful life with your kids. I'll start this show with a warning that the audio quality in the intro is messed up, but once my conversation with my guest starts, it's back to normal. Today on the show, we have Bonnie Compton. She is a child and adolescent therapist, parent coach, and pediatric nurse practitioner. She has a practice that's accessible in person here in Charleston, South Carolina, and over the phone or Skype, etc. Bonnie works with parents and families through one-on-one or group parent coaching. She also facilitates parenting retreats, workshops, and classes. Something that she and I have in common, though I don't have near the credentials or experience, is an evolution from working directly with kids to deciding that we would have more impact working with parents. So although she isn't currently spending most of her time directly with little ones, like most of our other guests, she does have the experience and the added perspective of working with both sides of the parent-child dynamic. In her best-selling book, Mothering with Courage, and daily OM course called The Messages We Send Our Children, I'll put links to everything in the show notes, Bonnie educates, inspires, and empowers parents to learn to trust their own inner voice. As she puts it, it's that inner wisdom that allows women to become their child's best parenting advocate. She shares her vision for parenting with courage through speaking, webinars, general media, and as a host of her own podcast radio program, Wholehearted Parenting Radio. And that can be found on iTunes, Web Talk Radio, Radioactive Broadcasting Network, and Stitcher Radio. I am taking notes. Today we're going to talk about a lot of different things, including the book that she recently published, Mothering with Courage, and we're going to talk about what that means and who could benefit from grabbing a copy of that. Bonnie is another one of my guests who I personally would just love to trade jobs with for a while, so you may find us getting a little more in-depth on this episode, but you'll be able to follow. All right, let's get into my conversation with Bonnie Compton. Thank you for being with us today. I'm going to jump right into our first question, same question I ask everyone, which is, what is the main thing that you have learned from all of your time working with kids?
Well, I want to thank you, James, for having me, first off. And I want to let parents know who are listening, although I'm a child and adolescent therapist, I am no longer working with kids directly. I shifted the focus of my practice several years ago to parenting only. But here's what I've learned. For many years I've worked with kids. I used to be a pediatric nurse practitioner and then became a child and adolescent therapist. And I'm a mom of 4 adult kids. I've learned that kids are our teachers when we're open to learning from them. They have so much to teach us. You know, as parents, we often think we know best, and we don't many times. One of the other things I've learned, and I share with parents, is when kids push your button, which they do over and over again, they're really testing you to see if you'll be the parent they need you to be, to really be the grown-up in the room. So I often tell parents, the child that you have that pushes your buttons the most, you're going to grow so much from if you're open to their teaching. Another thing I learned from kids is they really want to do the right thing. after seeing many kids and teens in therapy saying, if I were a better kid, my parents would be happier, my family would be happier. If I could only choose to do the right thing, and they wanted to do the right thing, just they had some obstacles getting in their way. Another thing that I learned my years working through kids or with kids and parents, their number one question, and they still ask me this, is, and it goes right along with your radio show today, James, is why won't my child listen to me? And I've told parents for many years, because you've trained them not to. And we've all done that as parents. So those are the kids. I've learned many things from kids. Now what I'm doing is helping parents see their children in a different light, see their true essence, that they are not their behavior. That's not who they are.
It's interesting you mentioned that the kids are our teachers, and also that we've trained them not to listen. So there's a two-way street of, in a way, training each other that you're pointing to.
Right. Yeah, it becomes learned behavior, because if you think about it, if a parent is going to say 5 times, brush your teeth, brush your teeth, brush your teeth, and the child or teen knows whatever they're being asked to do, that chances are the parent's not really going to mean it until they get to the 5th time. And by then the parent's yelling. The kid's like, why are you yelling at me? It's like, because I told you 5 times to brush your teeth. So, as I say to parents, wouldn't you wait also? If you thought you could get away with it, if it was something you really didn't want to do, you were playing a video game, you could put it off, or whatever. We've all trained kids because they know we're going to say it over and over and over and then get frustrated or angry.
So we like to look at specific examples, and if you have any to offer, that's fine. You did just mention, getting a kid to brush their teeth, which I think is, everyone has dealt with that. Right.
Yeah. So, if I can just speak briefly about why I shifted the focus of my practice
to
parenting after working with kids and teens for many years. As I said, I would hear over and over again, if I were a better kid, my family would be happy, my parents would be happy. And I really felt for these kids, and they had very loving, devoted, caring parents. But it's very easy as a parent, and again, I'm a parent and a grandmother, and this is human nature, rather than focus on ourselves, it's easier to blame somebody else, right? So parents would call me with their kids' behavioral issues and say, I want to come in, I want you to fix my child's behavior, my teen's behavior. And I would often respond, they're not broken, they don't need to be fixed. I'm really here to help them fit in their world a bit better. And then I got to the point, and I was working as much with the parents while I was working with the child or teen. Parents often didn't realize that. But getting parents to shift their lens, to shift their parts of the behavioral equation. And then I got to the point, I thought, if I can get to parents early on, I could save a lot of heartache within families and really damaged relationships. And so I had the courage, and it took courage to do this, to make the change. But I often tell parents, if you're waiting for your child to change, you're going to be waiting a long time. Change begins with you. And they're like, really? Why me? Many parents get it. And, but it's hard. You don't want to change. You want to, and as I said, we feel as parents, we know best. So anyway, that's really kind of my background, why I shifted my practice. In terms of trying to get a child to listen or to do something, how do I get my kid to do something?
Yeah, so let's use that as an example. A kid brushing their teeth, and maybe we can even choose a specific age and try to paint a picture of what goes on in that scenario when the kid doesn't want to do it.
Sure. So, of course, developmentally with younger children, you need to be there to help them, right? But let's take, for example, a 10-year-old who hates we'll say a 10-year-old boy, because many of them hate to brush their teeth,
sure,
right? And so, they're told to do it, and okay, in a minute, or whatever. Or, I know our son used to do this. I already brushed it. Well, I always tell parents, there's another thing parents complain about. My child lies all the time. And I said, they're not a pathological liar. They're lying for a couple reasons. Either they don't want to do what you're asking them to do, or they did something they weren't supposed to, and they don't want to experience the consequences of that choice. So let's say, for example, go brush your teeth. A 10-year-old boy knows what they need to do. They know routines, morning and evening, right?
Right.
And so instead of saying you need to go brush your teeth, you need to go, because after a while you sound like Charlie Brown's parents, the cartoon, wah, 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 like, you know what to do, go do it. If they say, I did it, and you know they didn't, the toothbrush is bone dry, don't get into this argument. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Because kids will dig themselves deeper and deeper and deeper and continue to lie. And so, you can say, look, what are you going to do to fix this now? Toothbrush is dry. And no, so I'm not even engaged in this conversation. You cannot obviously force a child to, you can't hold them down and brush their teeth at that age. You begin to talk to them about choices that they're making and the consequences of those choices. So you talk about health and what happens to teeth. I often recommend, especially with a younger child, kind of dangling a carrot, go brush your teeth now and then we'll read a story. Go brush your teeth now and then we'll play a game. Kind of get the thing out of the way you don't want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you find as a parent that it's a major battle and it's become a power of wills, perhaps talking to your 10-year-old son, I'm getting kind of tired of this every day, and I would imagine you're getting tired of hearing me nag you. What would be helpful? What do you need? So sometimes kids will come up with things. I remember actually one of our daughters, she still as an adult now, hates to be told what to do. She'd bristle with it. And so I'd hand her a sticky note. By 5 o'clock, please have the dishwasher emptied. She wouldn't argue with the note where she'd argue with me. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the sticky note doesn't have a tone of voice.
Exactly.
And it doesn't.
Exactly.
There's no dirty look that could possibly be conveyed in a sticky note.
Right. The eye rolling and all of that. Yeah. If I can just, quickly give some other examples, because there are consequences for choices that we all make, right? As adults, we speed. We've got a chance of getting a speeding ticket. That is a consequence. So if you can pair as much of a natural consequence to, say, teeth brushing, you could end up with cavities, this, and this down the road kind of thing. In terms of, just some other examples, if you're struggling getting your kids to bed at night and say you have a routine with story time, and you say, look, we have limited time to get ready for bed. I love reading 3 stories to you, but the longer you're taking to get ready, you're using up that time for story time. So we're only going to be able to do 2 books or 1 book. And I bet tomorrow night you'll make a better choice. Trying the battles of homework, trying to get your child to do a homework or teen or whatever. They need to be able to experience the consequences of their choice. Now, a child who is struggling in school is one thing and has some learning issues. Obviously, they're going to need more help. But if it's a child or teen who are just fighting you on it, don't want to do it, there's no learning issues, then allow them the consequence of going to school and not having it done without you as a parent feeling like I need to write a note that they weren't feeling well or whatever. That's one of the things that research is showing now with parents, and it's been done out of love, but also out of their own anxiety. What will the teacher think if they don't turn in their homework? What will the teacher think if they didn't study for,
Right.
So parents are working so much harder than kids and helicopter parenting, hovering over them, making sure everything's okay. Allow them to go to school and say to the teacher, I didn't do my homework, and experience that. Or if you're in a battle of wills and turning off a video game, or getting off an iPad or whatever, you have a choice. This is a privilege.
I wonder if the parent is feeling that same anxiety. The teacher's going to be mad at them. They have their own flashbacks from being scolded by a teacher.
Right, that, and also parents, their anxiety is, how am I going to look as a parent? Am I going to look like a bad parent because I didn't force my kid to do homework? And which just sets up this whole power struggle. If a child is refusing to turn off the TV or video games, this is a privilege. And with privileges, there needs to be responsible behavior. Turn it off in 5 minutes, or you lose the privilege of playing with it tomorrow night. You decide and walk away. But then follow through on the consequence.
So, going back to the teeth brushing example, one of the first steps you were talking about was to talk to the child about their choices, how it's going to affect them. How it's going to affect them in the short term with maybe some consequences, how it's going to affect them in the long run.
Right.
Is that a conversation that you find people are going to be having over and over? Are people saying, hey, I've tried talking to him. I've told him all that. He doesn't listen to that either. Or does that nip it in the bud? I'm just wondering how often it kind of goes to that, and how much time people can set aside and say, I do have time to talk this through with them.
Well, I think of course it's not going to nip it in the bud. My 10-year-old boy is not, most kids are going to think, oh, that's not going to happen to me, until they have to go for their first cavity drilling, right?
Right.
But certainly you're educating them. You're educating them about eating healthy, exercising. It's part of, self-care. And so you have these conversations. You're not going to keep having them over and over again, but as a reminder, these are your teeth. These are the only teeth you have. I get it. The other thing that I often tell parents, I always tell them the first visit with me, if you don't remember anything else, remember the word acknowledge. So acknowledge your 10-year-old son. I get it. I didn't like to brush my teeth either. I hated to. But here's what I found out by not doing it, or what I have seen. So it's such a short 2 minutes out of your day, put on some music. Put on your favorite music and brush it to your teeth to your favorite song kind of thing. So you don't want to keep having these conversations, but you need to. It's like, and especially they're at different developmental stages. What you really, as a parent, we often try to control our kids' behavior. What happens when you try? I always tell parents, I don't like to be controlled. Do you? And they say no. I said, what happens when you try to control your child's behavior? They resist. They fight back. Right? Nobody likes to be controlled. So you want to inspire and motivate them to choose behavior for themselves, not for you.
So, and maybe this is kind of like my last question. I'm imagining a parent hearing this, and they're hearing the steps of, the conversations, the, dangling a carrot, etc. And I'm thinking that they might be saying to themselves, I don't have time for that. It's already 9:00. It's already, bedtime was 5 minutes ago, and now I've got to have this conversation. So, what does the time frame look like?
Okay.
And when is when is the conversation over, how many minutes does this take is really what I'm thinking. Because these parents, people at 9 o'clock with a kid who's still up, they're counting the minutes.
Exactly. So when parents say to me, this is too much work, I don't have time for this, and I say, how much time are you spending telling them over and over and over again and then yelling at them for not doing what you asked half hour ago? So this is not all of a sudden at 9 o'clock you begin talking, at 9 p.m. you begin talking about the importance of brushing their teeth, right? These are conversations you have during what I call soft times, when you're just hanging out together, when you're not going through the hard time. Don't have this conversation when you're mad at your child or they're mad at you. That's not the time to have it. So it's about mindful, proactive parenting, conscious parenting on a daily basis, and setting your child up for success. Again, at night, let's say parents are tired, kids are tired, a child's not getting ready for bed, that's the time to have the conversation. There's limited time to get ready for bed. And I love telling you stories, but we're not going to have as much time. So if you keep fooling around, you're not ready, that's your choice, but we're only going to have time for one story instead of three. That does not take a long time. What takes a long time and really diminishes connection with kids and your relationship with them is telling them over and over and over and chasing them around and then getting mad. And then everybody goes to bed mad. Yeah. How do you want to spend your time?
And what does it cost? When a parent is looking at the time cost, is there also an emotional cost that
absolutely
maybe they did save some time doing it in a the yelling way or whatever, but
right.
How can we weigh that cost?
At what cost?
And even if we're just thinking selfishly, forgetting about the kids' feelings, what it's like when we're yelling, how that's going to affect us trying to get up for work the next day,
Sure, absolutely. The stress of that. And, research has shown, and I talk to parents about this all the time, about the importance of connection with kids. And research has shown that kids who feel more connected to their parents are much more apt to follow their guidance. And so when I work with parents, and so let me ask you, if you had a boss, you were at work and you had a boss, and the only time they really spent time with you or talked to you was, did you write that report? Did you do this? Did you schedule that meeting? Did you? And what are the chances you'd want to go hang out with them for dinner or get a glass of wine after dinner? And they said, none.
Right.
I said, well, think about if your agenda, and yes, you've got to get through, mealtime, homework, bath time, all of that. But if your agenda as a parent outweighs your connection with your child, then there's an imbalance. So if the child feels like every time I see my parent, all they're doing is, did you do your homework? Why didn't you do your homework? You could have done better in that baseball game, but there's not the connection. They're going to resist more and fight you more as a parent. But I always say connect first before you do anything else. Toni Morrison, the famous poet who just died, I love her quote and her question. When she was on Oprah, she said, she asked parents, and this is actually in my book, do your eyes light up when your child enters the room? Or are you focusing on their dirty face, their mismatched clothes? That is connection right there.
Mm-hmm. That's Toni Morrison?
Yes, Toni Morrison. One of the first homework assignments I give parents is spending this carved out, devoted, special time with their kids. And these are parents who are with their kids a lot, but they're also with their kids a lot, driving them to soccer practice and, to the dentist, orthodontist, and, things like that. And, I've had some parents say, I don't have time. And I say, if you can create 10 to 15 minutes of hanging out with your child or your teen. Say, hey, I miss just hanging out with you. I feel like we've been so busy and it's always do. I just want to hang out. What do you want to do? And let the child or the teen choose. You begin to see your child in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's why I call that soft time, because it gets you through the hard times.
Yeah, I'm thinking of all the different resistance, devil's advocate that I'm sure you hear when you suggest any of these things. I'll spare you, but
I've heard them.
I'm sure you've heard it all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've also had parents say to me in my work now with them, dads in particular, but they will say, it's not going to work, what I'm suggesting. And my response is, you're right, it's not going to work if you believe it's not going to work. Are you willing to try? And they come back the next week and they're going, oh my gosh, you're magic. I'm like, I'm not magic. You were the one doing the work. And you were willing to shift your lens and try something different because what you had been doing was not working for you.
Yeah. The magic was in the connection that they generated in that 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Right.
I was working with a teen, this is probably 5 years ago, and while I was working with her, I used to facilitate screen-free parenting classes where I work at the Guidance Center. And this teen said to me, well, it was funny because the dad was reporting in the class. He said, oh my gosh, since I've been doing these different things like you're suggesting, he said, I'm watching my daughter just try to keep going and get me upset. And it's not working. And he said, it's kind of funny to watch and see what she's trying next. Well, she came in the next week to me and said, I don't know what you're doing with my dad, but he is so much nicer to me now. It's just funny to hear, so. And it was really the dad changing his own behavior. And so he was, one of the big things I do is help parents learn to respond to their child, not react to their child's behavior. And so it's not hands-off parenting. You are very involved parenting, but you're responding in a very mature adult way versus reacting, which we all do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to try to summarize, going back to the brushing teeth thing, because I don't want to cover all of our theoretical bases as much as I enjoy it.
Sure.
So it's time to brush teeth, and you know that, the child knows that, and you've said it in a nice enough way. What I'm hearing you say is, if they lie, don't argue with them about the lie. Don't say, I know you're lying. You were talking about other ways to not engage in that, and maybe, could you call it not dignifying it kind of with a response would be a way I think about that.
Yeah, don't try to prove. If you know they're lying, don't keep saying you're lying. No, I'm not. Yes, you are.
Right.
No, I'm not. Okay, I know you did not brush your teeth. The toothbrush is dry. What do you need to do now to correct this? The kid knows he needs to brush his teeth.
So that what do you need to do now? That's an open-ended question, and you can use that.
Your child knows what to do, so go do it. It's almost like walking toward her. Again, kids want to do the right thing. Now, unless they have oppositional defiant disorder, or their behavior is so oppositional, we don't have time to get into that. That's a whole different thing. But for the average kid, they know they're going to try to get out of it. Again, they're asking you to be the parent you need to be, to step up, not be yelling, screaming, taking it personally, thinking, why are they doing this? They're trying to drive me crazy. No, they just don't want to brush their teeth.
So the next thing you would do is you're talking to them. Go ahead.
I would walk towards them. What I kind of say to parents is kind of like herding. It's like, you know what to do next, to do it. Again, there are different ways to up to approach this. If you have a child who is really, 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 really fighting you on it, then I would be having more conversations. What is it about acknowledging they don't like it? What is it about brushing your teeth? I'm curious. It may be the toothpaste. It may be so what is it that you could do, what do you think would make it less painful for you? Not true pain, but, perhaps, so, put your earbuds in with a song, whatever. This has got to be done. I am your parent. Obviously, I wouldn't let you just never brush your teeth forever because you'd be pretty angry at me as you got older and you had no teeth.
Right.
I have responsibility.
And so that's the kind of second step is that you're talking about these different choices. You're talking about the choice of, putting in the earbuds or other ways that they can make the situation more bearable for them. And you're also talking about what it looks like if they make the wrong choice in that scenario and how that's going to make them unhappy in various ways. And that's not a 30-minute conversation every night.
No. If you find, because kids will try to keep you going and negotiate and argue with you, so then they don't have to do what they were told to do. So if you have one like that, don't engage.
Yeah. And then you talked about, instead having that natural consequence, which can be a positive. You called it dangling a carrot, and that's, I wanted to read you a story tonight. We have time for 2 stories, but not if it takes 20 minutes to brush your teeth, then we won't have time for that. So.
Right.
That's
exactly.
That's another choice that you're giving them, but it's also a positive outcome that they can go for. And then I really like the next thing that I heard was around kind of an emotional, when you're meeting them at an emotional level and you're saying, I'm tired of this. And you talked about maybe having these conversations not at that point of stress, maybe during what you're calling a soft time, where you can talk to the kid and say, you don't like brushing your teeth. I don't like yelling at you to brush your teeth, and talking to them about your own personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way to connect. And as you said, the connection is going to encourage them to follow your guidance.
Right. And I will add that if a parent is saying not only are they refusing to brush their teeth, they're refusing to do this and that, that is a bigger issue.
Yeah.
And I would say at that point, a parent's agenda and a parent's stress level is outweighing the connection. If the child or teen feels like, and the parent's stressed, and I get it. And parenting nowadays, their life is so much busier. And easily, you can easily get distracted with digital devices, et cetera. But if it's not only teeth brushing, there is a bigger issue. So again, is the child going to remember to brush their teeth every night? No. Are they going to remember to do it on their own? Some will and some won't. You have a child with ADHD, they're just getting through the next moment. They're living in the present moment. They're going to need to be reminded a bit more, with a chart or whatever.
You're a licensed child and adolescent therapist.
Yeah.
When should people pick up the phone and call a therapist? How does someone know when the stress level is to that point?
Well, I always recommend to parents, especially if they've worked with me, and don't wait to come back in when you're in crisis. So if you feel like what you've been doing is not working, you feel like you're just tired of yelling, you feel like you're really not connecting with your child, and life is precious. This is not how you want to be spending your time. I always say to parents, and I think there was always a stigma about therapy. And I tell dads in particular, I'm a coach, I'm a parent coach. Think of me as a coach. Think of, I think, of course, as a therapist, everybody would benefit from therapy. But therapy just helps you create the life that you want and to really make some different choices. If it's not working for you, as I often say to parents, this was years ago when I was a newer therapist, that's not going to work. Anything I suggested, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. And I'm like, well, what you're doing, is it working for you? No. Well, are you willing to try something different? And so I recommend to families to reach out sooner than later. At least pick up the phone and have a conversation and see if you feel this is something you and your family would benefit from.
I'm imagining the stigma. If I'm seeing a therapist, it's because I'm crazy. And what you had just said is, if you're doing the same thing over and over and it's not working, and you're not looking for help, that's another definition.
Of insanity,
right.
Einstein. You're trying to, So it's. I just often say life is precious, and your time with your kids is precious. And really going to a therapist, to a coach, is an investment in your relationship with your child and teen, because they are not going to be living with you forever. And as I often ask parents, what kind of relationship do you want with your adult child? Do you want them to come back and want to see you? Do you want them to look to you for guidance? Yes. Well, now is the time to be working on that relationship. Because if it's been where they felt they were controlled, their feelings weren't taken into consideration, they weren't acknowledged, it was always do this because I said so, I'm the parent kind of thing, they're not going to want to come back. They're not going to look to you for guidance. So it really is about creating this connected relationship now. And it's focusing on yourself as a parent. In my book, Mothering with Courage, there's a chapter, Whose Behavior Is It Anyway? And it really is about, we can't control anybody else in life, right? Nor should we, although we often do. We can only control what we're going to do and how we're going to be in the world. And that's what parents see when they work with me in a very short time. Within 1 to 2 weeks, they're like, oh my gosh, things are so much better. Because the parents have changed, not the child. Yeah. Well, the child then changed.
Did you say whose behavior is it anyway?
Yes, it's one of the chapters.
Right.
Yeah, whose behavior is it anyway?
You're talking about agency and autonomy.
Yes, well, I'm talking about as long as a parent continues to focus on what the child is doing wrong,
mm-hmm.
and they're not focusing on how they're part of the behavioral equation, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, why their child's not listening to them, whose behavior is it anyway? It's because the parents are saying it 5 to 10 times and then yelling.
And that comes from your book, Mothering with Courage, which just came out a couple of years ago. What led you to want to write a book?
Actually, I never thought I would write a book because I thought and was told by an 11th grade teacher that I was a very poor writer, and I believed him. But about 12 years ago, I opened my mouth one day and said, I'm going to write a book for moms, and literally turned my head around like, who said that? Not me. I'm a terrible writer. But it kept coming to me, and I don't know if you have ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, but actually was writing my book while I was reading her book. And it's like when you get tapped kind of on the shoulder, inspiration, if you're going to write this book, then, go for it. And I realized, looking back, that I was the one to write this book. I came from a very dysfunctional family, although my parents loved me as much as they could. But my mom had undiagnosed borderline personality disorder, and my dad was an alcoholic. And so I learned a lot of things at a very young age, and then went on to do the work I'm doing and, being a mom, et cetera. What I found was, over many years, moms in particular were asking, what book should I read? what parents would ask. Moms had to search to be the best mom possible for their child, and they were looking for answers in a book. And I used to say, you have the answers within when you learn to trust your intuition.
And they said, I don't believe you. Write me a book.
Exactly. And I said, you are your child's best parenting expert. And it led me to write, actually, for probably 8 years, I resisted writing the book. I would take notes, but finally, the last 2 years, I thought my message is greater than my fear. And I really had a fear of writing it. But anyway, I got serious. I hired an editor. And the premise of the book is, moms, you have the answers within. So there is sound parenting information in there.
Uh-huh.
And then
journaling prompts at the end of each chapter to help moms find their own answers. I was wondering about the title. When you chose Mothering with Courage, I have my own ideas about how courage shows up in parenting. What does that mean to you? How did you choose courage? Well, the tagline is becoming a mom who listens more, that is to herself, worries less, and loves deeply. Because many moms become overwhelmed and anxious. I'm not doing this right. I'm not good enough. And they're reaching out for help. And they're reading so many different books. And when I pitched this idea to my publisher, they asked, how many parenting books? And there were over 100,000 parenting books. Yeah, why another one? And I said, because although there are wonderful books out there, many parents are becoming overwhelmed and still feel like, well, I can try this for a little bit and I'll try this, but they're not really taking the time to be still and realize what matters to them and their family. And so this book is written in a way, and a mom can pick up chapter 6 or read chapter 1, or, it would be wonderful to read the whole book, then do the journaling prompts and really find your own answers. So at the end of the day, as a mom, you did the best you could, and let go of the mama guilt. Because, as I say, mama guilt is the gift that keeps on giving and giving and giving if you allow it. I've had many dads say, well, why'd you write it for moms? I said, substitute fathering with courage. I actually have some dads that are reading it now. And because it will apply to dads also. But I was speaking to moms at the time. You're looking at courage as really an act of listening more, and you said so back to courage. Yes, thank you for redirecting me here. Courage it takes courage to be a parent, to show up every day. Courage to trust. I've got this as a mom. I have the answers within, and I can worry less, and I can listen to my own intuition. And it does take courage to show up as a mom or a dad every single day, and to be the parent your child needs you to be, and not try to be their best friend. I always tell parents they're going to have many best friends. They're going to be very lucky if they have 2 parents in their life. Yeah. So one of the problems that you just mentioned is people not listening to their intuition. We all do that sometimes. Sometimes it's sometimes we're glad that we didn't follow our gut, and other times that's a mistake. What advice do you hear from other researchers, from other professionals, that you think people should not follow? Is there something out there that's commonly espoused and not so helpful? Well, one of the things that I often joke with parents about, and although this book has been out for years, the tried and true 1, 2, 3 magic book. Okay. And I often say, what that book really taught kids to count, because parents would get to 2 and then start going 2 1/4, 2 1/2, because they really didn't want to follow through on the consequences that they had told their child to begin with. And so that, I think, is one book, that I would say, there's a different way. Yeah. There's an easier way to parent. And that's still a bestseller. That's in your top 15 on Amazon, I believe. I know, which is, and maybe at the time that it was written, it's been out for years and years. Yeah. Does it work?
Yeah, it's like yelling works. It's like parents will say, well, spanking works. It works in the moment, but at what cost?
Works
and
like magic. Works like magic.
Learning. Exactly. And
you
what
don't
are they
see what's really
actually
going on behind the curtain because it's magic. So.
Right, exactly. The other things that are out there are shaming and comparing, which are very damaging to kids. How many times do I have to tell you, what is wrong with you? Why can't you be more like so-and-so? And those are not professionals saying that, but there are some, without mentioning books or whatever, there are some things that they use shaming, and which is never a good thing. And I don't know if you remember, I do, it wasn't that long ago, there were parents publicly shaming their kids on social media, taking videos of them, making them wear sandwich signs on a street corner in a city. I lied to my mother. That's public shaming, and which is very detrimental. And we all easily can inadvertently shame without even realizing it. It's like, what's the matter with you? Why? This is the 5th time you've spilt your milk. Well, how about saying, you know what? This isn't working. Let's figure out something. Should we use a cup at the top? Getting the child to help clean it up. Various things, but not shaming. How many times do I have to tell you stop spilling your milk? That is shaming.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. I do want to be respectful of your time. Where can we learn more about you? I'm going to put a lot of links to your work in our show notes. So,
okay.
Is there anything specific that you'd like for people to check out about you?
Sure. Well, my website, bonniecompton.com. I would love for parents to take a look. I have a beautiful video that I hired someone to create last year that really captures the essence of my work. It's on the homepage, and there are some parents in there talking about the results that they saw. As I said, I created a daily OM course, which is messages we send our children based on my book. It's a 8-week weekly course and it's very reasonably priced, and you receive weekly emails. I have a closed Facebook group, Parenting with Courage Community, and I have a private practice. I see parents at the Life Guidance Center in West Ashley, either in person or I do Zoom or over the phone because I know traffic has become horrible in Charleston and everybody's busy. But I do either individual work with parents. Sometimes I had a group coaching program for moms going for a while. I would like to get that going again. I also offer a 20-minute complimentary call to see if this is a good fit for you. I will tell parents, because I know the cost and the time commitment. My requirement is 4 sessions, and often parents don't need any more than that. They may hire me a year later, but it only takes 4, and unless there's major family dysfunction, a toxic divorce going on. But other than that, you're on your way. I inspire and motivate you and coach you so that you've got this. I help you become a calm and confident parent, and you've got the answers within. So,
well, thank you for offering all those different avenues of support. There's something for everyone.
Absolutely. This really is my life's calling. It is, and I love doing it, and I love seeing. I read one day that success is providing joy to others, and I thought, that's what I do, because when I first meet with a parent and then by the 4th session and how the family's in their joy and they have rekindled the joy of parenting. I had so many parents say to me, you have provided me hope when I thought there was none. So anyway, but I thank you, James. I've loved talking with you, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thanks so much for coming by. We'll post links to everything, and really enjoyed talking with you too.
All right. Take care.
Bye.